So hello everybody, my name is Becky Goddard Hill and I am here from Nottingham in England to tell you all about well-being in regard to your students. I hope we're going to have a lovely session together. I'm really looking forward to sharing some tips and tools with you today. We're going to start by acknowledging the current situation and the impact of that on the children in our care. Now, lots of you have been teaching online and lots of you have been teaching in person, and many of you will have been doing both. And I want to acknowledge what a tricky time as teachers that you have had. Not only will you have had your own worries about the pandemic and coronavirus and the impact perhaps on your friends and relatives and your vulnerability to it yourself working with so many children, but you will also had your children in your care impacted by the pandemic. Now, some of the children will have had an absolutely fine time. They will have been at home with their parents. They will have felt safe and secure. They'll have had room to study and room to work. But for many other children, families will have been impacted by ill health, by financial worry, and by stress. Some children will have had to share a study room with lots of other kids, and they will have had the stress of having stressed parents who are perhaps trying to work and home educate. It hasn't been easy. Reports that have looked into the well-being of children during the coronavirus have come back with a lot of mixed responses. Some saying it's been incredibly hard for them. Some say being at home has been great for their sense of security. We do know here in the UK that for children in their secondary schools, older children, it's been extremely difficult. And rates of self-harming have gone up to over 100%, which is deeply concerning. And now back to school is on the horizon here in the UK. There is a lot of talk about children's anxiety, worried about catching up with work that's been missed, and about mixing with friends again. As teachers, we have a lot of work to do to ensure our students feel secure and safe, not just during this time of return to school and the pandemic, but always it's part of our role and part of our job. And it's a very big task. Now, the kids that we care for are all absolutely unique. Even if we teach in a wealthy international school, it doesn't follow that the children are living in secure, safe homes where they can study easily and everything is fine. All families are different and all families respond to stress differently. So whilst we have to teach one way to our class, we have to remember that each and every child will respond differently and their mental health is unique, just as they are. And we need to keep our eye on how they are as individuals. Now, there are lots and lots of blocks to well-being and learning. And you may have some yourself this morning. You might be worried about things you need to do later today or things that happened at breakfast, perhaps with your own children. So let's just do a little exercise right now to get you in the room and feeling relaxed. This exercise is called a finger lines exercise, and it's one I often like to do with kids I work with. I work as a therapist with children with a wide range of issues, from anxiety to depression, to low self-esteem, OCD, lack of confidence. And I teach them ways to calm themselves down and take really good care of their emotional health. I'm a qualified psychotherapist and a life coach, and I write books on well-being full of simple tips to help kids feel fantastic about who they are, to know where to get help when they need it. And so all the tools I'm going to show you today are simple, they're fun, they're easy for kids to pick up and access, but most importantly, they'll make them feel more robust and resilient. So one little exercise I love to teach them is called finger lines. And all you do is take your hand and one finger. Please do this along with me. And you simply run your finger along the lines in your hand. It's a little bit of self-nurturing, a little bit of pause in a frenzied day. And for kids who are stressing out, focusing on numbers, focusing on sensations, well, all that helps them calm down. And for kids who might be sat in the classroom feeling all tense, they can just do this under the desk. Count the lines on their fingers, and it'll just help them relax a little bit more. And it'll bring them back into the moment of where they are and what they're doing. So it's a tiny bit of mindfulness too. There are many blocks to well-being and learning. It could be unsupported learning needs, perhaps a child has ADHD or dyslexia. It could be their home life and the environmental factors that are impacting on them. Perhaps they've come to school hungry. Perhaps they're at home studying, but the house is packed with people and it's very hard for them to concentrate. And then, of course, there's faulty thinking. Faulty thinking can be extremely problematic, and it includes things like children catastrophizing when there's a problem. It includes things like children feeling they can't do something, they just can't, and having all those unhelpful thoughts that blocks them. Low self-esteem and lack of confidence has always blocked kids' learning, but it also blocks their well-being. It means they perhaps don't reach out in terms of friendships or ask for help when they need it. Poor self-care is critical when it comes to well-being. And by that, I mean things like perhaps not sleeping enough for teenagers, spending too much time on technology, not looking after themselves in terms of exercise and fresh air, getting out and about, perhaps not eating enough. Worrying and problem dwelling is also a big issue that blocks well-being. If kids sit with problems, perhaps not understanding what you've taught them, or worried about a relationship with the person they're sharing a table with, then they might not be able to listen to what you're teaching them. And they might get very, very stuck. We need to teach children to be problem solvers. Perfectionism is also a problem. I know around the world, but particularly here in the UK, we test our children a lot and they always feel they need to do better. And that pressure on ourselves to be perfect can mean we often fall short. And so we need to teach kids to accept that sometimes it will go wrong, sometimes they won't understand, and sometimes their marks won't be great, but it's okay. It's what they do about that that matters. We don't want them beating themselves up about it. And of course, not accessing support. So these are all problems and blocks to well-being that we as teachers can unpick. We can make these things better for the kids in our care. So how do we do that? Well, this is the fun stuff. Teaching self-care is important. It means we don't have to keep doing it ourselves because we've taught kids to look after themselves. And a child that can look after themselves emotionally is going to go far in life. Mental health is everything when it comes to happiness and well-being and coping. So of all the things we teach the young people in our care, this is the one that will impact their adult lives in the biggest way. They won't necessarily remember the name of that capital city or the river that you taught them about or how coal is mined. But if you've taught them that when they're stressed, they need to calm down first before they make a decision. If you have taught them that self-kindness, when things are tricky, is so much better than self-harm, then they will cope in life with the challenges it brings. So let's teach our kids to be robust and resilient. But how do we teach self-care skills? Well, there's lots of ways actually, and we can do this directly through starting a session with self-care, resetting partway through a session by teaching self-care, through activities that we encourage the kids to do, through science of self-care and emotions. Kids love to know how and why things work. So let's teach them the science of that, and it will make so much more sense to them. And then we can set homework that is about nurturing themselves and their well-being. So let me talk you through a couple of these starters, and the rest you can absolutely explore. When it comes to breathing, it seems to be something we all do very naturally. But get our breathing wrong, if it starts to go really, really fast and shallow, our brains panic. And if our brains panic, our breathing gets fast and shallow. So the two are entirely reciprocal. We need to teach kids when they are worried to slow it down. A lovely way to teach breathing is through little fun exercises. With younger children, I encourage them to make candles of their fingers, perhaps using their age, and then to blow out the candles. So they're breathing through their nose, and a long, slow breath through pursed lips and blowing out those candles. Please do this along with me. By blowing out candles, kids just calm their heartbeat down, and that clears their brain and helps it relax, enabling them to focus. So if you're doing a particularly difficult session and everyone feels a bit uptight and it's all a bit hard, just taking a moment to reset by breathing, or to start the session by some lovely slow breathing, will make everyone feel better. Another lovely way to start a session is with a grounding exercise. Grounding is when you make children absolutely, completely in the moment. So they're not thinking about what happened before, or thinking about what they need to do later, or worrying about this or worrying about that. They're completely with you. And in order to teach kids grounding, it's very, very simple. You ask them to look around and spot 5 things they can see, then 4 things they can touch, 3 things they can hear, 2 things they can smell, and 1 thing they can taste. And this mindfulness grounding makes them absolutely present in the moment, and you've got their attention back. It's a really good way to reset. And if a child is spiraling out of control, they're very angry or they're very upset or distressed, grounding is a really good way to reroute them in the moment. I also like to encourage kids to do Tai Chi. I love Tai Chi myself. I do it every single morning, 10-minute video that I watch on YouTube, and I just move with the flow. It's so good to get your body feeling nice and relaxed and to get you feeling very, very calm. So you could perhaps start a session with that, maybe do that a couple of times a week to help kids feel really relaxed and to encourage them to see the link between their body and the mind, so they know when they relax their body, their mind is also clearer. Scientists have proven that when our minds are clear, we're actually 30% more intelligent. You are going to get so much more out of your students if their well-being is good. So never think of this as something fluffy that isn't worth teaching. It absolutely is, and it will absolutely improve academic performance too. Positive affirmations are wonderful. The jury is out on them. Some people hate them and some people love them, but science has proven they do work. Positive affirmations you could use in your classroom at the start of a session or midway through could include things like, I can do tricky things. I can do hard things. I can cope. I can try my best. I can achieve. These positive statements become positive thoughts, and positive thoughts, as we know, lead to feelings of confidence and control, rather than the opposite, despair and defeat. And when kids feel confident and in control, they work with more focus and more clarity and more enthusiasm. A positive affirmation literally takes 20 seconds to filter through a class and to have your kids say back to you. Your students might think it's a bit weird at first. Persist with it. This is so powerful and it is so easy. And that's what's important about these starters and resets. They're all extremely easy. My next suggestion would be music. Music is really just brilliant for changing a mood. So you might be doing something really serious and then you might say, come on, we need to shake it up now. Put on a great pop tune and have your kids stand at the desk, do a little dance. Or if they're at home, say to them, okay, we're going to pause, I'm going to play a song, dance around your kitchen or your study, and then let's start again. It's a mood changer. It can also really help people relax. So you might want to use calming music, however you want to do it. And then visualizations. A guided visualization takes a couple of minutes, but can take kids to another place. And it can really help them feel content and happy and motivated. You can choose what you want your visualization to enhance. And you can just do a little search on Google and find plenty of different guided visualizations or meditations to help induce a certain mood to enhance well-being. So they're starters and resets. But what about direct activities? What could you say or set as work to really promote well-being? Well, here are a few suggestions. If you work with younger children, perhaps you could encourage them to write up their kindness story, to tell you a story about when they were kind. This will reinforce into their mind how brilliant being kind feels, how it helps them feel connected to other people, how it increases their feelings of self-worth. And it's definitely something to encourage. In my book, Create Your Own Kindness, I share 50 activities to help kids be kinder to themselves, kinder to other people, and kinder to the world. And all of those activities are fun and simple. And just by getting a kid to think about kindness for a while will remind them how wonderful it is. Then maybe you could get them to list the attributes of being a good friend and then reflect on that list and see if they behave that way. For the students in your class to have good peer relationships makes all the difference to their school experience. Even if they are currently working at home, keeping those connections alive and those relationships solid is very important to them. Most kids, when you ask them how their day at school has been, will tell you who they played with or who they hung out with or some information about one of their friends. It is absolutely key and crucial to their learning that they have these good relationships. They could devise a list of random acts of kindness that they could do. They could look at different characters in books. Reading is a brilliant way to develop empathy. And empathy, understanding other people and how they might feel, is so key to relationships. And again, that will enhance a child's school experience and their personal life immensely. Encouraging nurturing activities is a very simple way to enhance well-being. When we give to other people, we receive. So by encouraging a child to read to their younger sibling or a younger child in school, or to nurture the school plant, or perhaps take care of the school pet, you are enhancing their well-being by encouraging them to be giving. And yes, that link, healthy bodies to healthy minds, is really important. And then of course there's the science of well-being, which is just absolutely fascinating. All of this information is included in my books, but you can do a little Google search and find this very easily. Kindness is contagious. What we focus on gets bigger and expands. When we calm our body and our nervous system, our brain calms right down. When we name our feelings, our brain stops panicking and we are able to make better choices. We are, as I've said, more intelligent when we're calm. Neuroplasticity means we can change our brains. So whilst you might think, oh, I always see the negative, I'm never good at seeing the positives, you can train that. And telling kids that they can change their brains, that they can strengthen those neural pathways through practice and repetition, will make them feel empowered. Teach them how mirror neurons work. So when they're around people who are very miserable, they are going to feel like that. If they hang out with bullies, they're likely to absorb that behavior. If they're around positive, happy people, they will be positive, happy people. We mirror each other. And that's very, very important. So do share the science of well-being with kids. They think it is fascinating. And once they understand how and why it works, they'll be able to absorb it a lot more. And then we move on to teaching self-care skills indirectly. And there are lots of ways we can do this. But of course, as always, and pretty much with everything, it starts with ourselves. So we need to role model good self-care. If you have been teaching for 20 minutes and feel a bit worn out by it all, acknowledge that and say, right, class, I am going to stretch now because I need to move my body. I've been sat still and it's all been very serious. So I'm going to do a bit of stretching. Let them know. Let them know you're going to take a breather. Let them know, because you've worked hard all week, that this weekend you're going to get out in nature and absorb all of that peace. Role model to them. If you start to get cross, or if you make a mistake, that you can apologize, that you can take a minute to calm down and reset. Show them good well-being. Don't sit around and say, gosh, I'm so stressed. This is so difficult. You're all a nightmare. Role model positivity and problem solving to them. They really do look to you for guidance, not only in what you say, but of course in what you do. It's really important. Suggest self-care skills to them. So perhaps you've finished a session or you've finished a day at school. You can suggest, right, everyone, I want you to get some fresh air this evening. I think it'd be a really good idea after we've been cooped up all day. Or you could perhaps prompt them to do something really great and say, tonight, I'd like you to listen to some music you've never listened to before, and just close your eyes and absorb it. Teach them to come off those screens and be open to other things and understand the power of peace. When you close sessions and recap what's happened, make sure it's peaceful, make sure it's positive. Let them know you've appreciated the time you've spent with them and the learning you've had with them. And because you valued that time and that teaching, they will also value that time and that teaching. They will be watching you very closely. When you tell them stories and when you read to them, really try and include stories that focus on well-being, so that you can talk about the kindness that was inherent in the story, or how someone picked themselves up after times were hard by focusing on the positives or building good relationships. Really try and get well-being into the stories that you share. And then, of course, there's quotes. Now, I love a positive quote, and they can be very motivating. So how do you share them with the class? Well, they could be at the bottom of your email. You could perhaps write one on your whiteboard. You could perhaps put it at the end of an exercise that you've done the written notes for. There are lots and lots of ways to make sure that you can get your messages across. And then we move to practical wellbeing support measures in schools. And I am sure your schools have some of these in place. And if they don't, it's absolutely brilliant if you can introduce them. So a worry box. A worry box is simply a box where children place their worries. Some students will find it difficult to tell you what it is that's bothering them. They might be embarrassed or uncomfortable. They might not know you very well. They might not feel they've got the physical opportunity to have that private conversation. And a worry box would just involve them writing what's concerning them on a piece of paper with their name on or anonymously, popping it in the box so teachers can hear what's going on. Suggestion boxes work exactly the same way. They might suggest to you that when you do sport, you don't pick a captain and tell them to pick a team because somebody will come last and it feels rubbish. They might suggest that you celebrate World Kindness Day because it would be really great fun, or even Earth Day, so kids feel more connected with nature. Kids are full of brilliant ideas, and they have so many suggestions about how their well-being can be supported. So do give them that opportunity. And where possible, provide the opportunity for them to come and talk to you on their own. Perhaps leave one break open a week where you're available and the kids could make a 5-minute appointment or just drop in. But do try and provide that access, because sometimes, apart from their parents, you are the only other adult that knows them well and that they feel safe enough with to speak to. The children I counsel always tell me in their list of helpers, first their parents, perhaps the grandparents, and always their favourite teacher. You are always in their list of top 5 adults every single time. You are vitally important. Let them have that one-on-one access with you somehow or other. And then email contact with parents. Well, that's really crucial. Parents need to be able to get hold of you to say, hey, you know, things are really bad at home, or my daughter just came home yesterday really sad and I don't really know what's wrong. It might be you need this email contact because you're working online. It might be parents can't get to see you at school because of the restrictions due to the pandemic, or simply because of the way your school is. Give them a very, very clear contact point so that you can together look after the well-being of that student. Wellbeing workshops like this are really important for all staff to access. We need to keep bringing the focus back to well-being because it is everything, and it is the backbone of children achieving well in school and growing to be citizens who can handle challenges and cope with stress and manage problems and be good parents. So wellbeing workshops are vital. If your school don't provide them, maybe you could put one on yourself, you know, and kids too. Give them wellbeing assemblies. Do a day about emotional health and well-being, you know, make it important, make it part and parcel of their education, and focus on kindness, because self-kindness is absolutely key to children being able to manage life. If they learn that when things are hard, you up the self-care, then they will be okay. Self-harm rates are exponential, they are, and we need to reduce them. And the best way to do that is teach kids when it's tough, you speak nicely to yourself, you forgive yourself, you treat yourself, you indulge yourself, you pamper yourself, and you really look after yourself well. And we need to directly and indirectly teach that to the kids in our care. And then practical wellbeing support measures at home. We need a clear point of contact for parents. Email, a phone number, and a name. They need to know who to contact. If they can't get through to school reception and then can't get through to the teacher, sometimes people will give up. And actually what they are trying to tell us might be vitally important. So we need a very clear contact pathway. And we also need to give children and our students a very clear opportunity to clarify any questions they have during lessons and post lessons. Let them know the process. I know from my own kids, occasionally they've had a lesson online, they've struggled, they've not understood it, and they've had to wait a whole week before they can ask again because no opportunity was given to clarify things. So we need to give kids a place where they can come back to us. And in a lesson, we need to provide space at the end to say, if anyone didn't understand that, please say so now, or you can wait to see me during break, or this is when I'll be available in the week for you to talk to. Give them an opportunity, because a child sat with a question that can't be answered leads them to huge stress, anxiety, and worry, particularly if they can't do their homework. So let's make things simple for them. And signposting is key too. So signposting would include what to do if. So what to do if you lose your PE kit, what to do if you've forgotten to bring in your homework, what to do if you've lost the assignment, what to do if your Wi-Fi went down and you were supposed to be in a life lesson. If kids have got very clear instructions and it's written for them in a what if or frequently asked question format, they will feel so much more secure. Also, many kids, when we verbally tell them to do things, it gets lost. Written support can be very helpful. So if you set some work, handing out a piece of paper with it on too, or sending a follow-up email, can make a great deal of difference. So written support can be very helpful because some kids are distracted, some aren't listening, and then they don't know what to do. So let's focus on well-being. Let's help parents by letting them know through written support what it is we're expecting in terms of behaviour and in terms of academic achievement through this time, and keep that conversation going so the focus can stay on the child's well-being and things aren't happening separately. Don't think you can underestimate the importance of phone calls and face-to-face contact. A couple of weeks ago, I had a parents' evening where I get to speak to my son and daughter's teachers, and we had it online and the sessions were 5 minutes long. It doesn't sound very long, does it? But seeing the teachers and my child seeing the teachers, hearing them talk with such positivity and passion and concern for my children was lovely. I felt more connected to them. I think they got a sense of who I was. My child saw them again after a long time apart, and actually just that moment of human connection meant the world. And the voice and physically seeing somebody is really powerful. And actually I came away from that thinking, gosh, I could trust them if I had a problem or I was worried about one of my kids. I could trust them because I felt that they cared about them. And I didn't get that from the written emails I've had. So don't underestimate that face-to-face contact or the power of a phone call to make all the difference when it comes to well-being support. Now we need to look at faulty thinking. Faulty thinking can massively block kids from learning. I mentioned this earlier. And this again is something I address in my books because it stops kids from feeling calm. So when it comes to creating their own calm, we need to really directly look at faulty thinking and unblock it. So what is it? Well, catastrophizing. For many kids, when one little thing goes wrong, they sit with it, they do nothing about it, but ruminate on it. They don't tell the teachers, they don't try and get the problem solved, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger in their mind until it's become a catastrophe. And maybe all it was that they've misplaced their homework, yeah? Or they didn't get their homework finished because they forgot. It is not the end of the world. It is not something worth tears and sleepless nights over. And we need to teach kids to rate their problems. So on a grand scale, if the house was on fire, that is a catastrophe. If they've fallen out with a best friend and nobody else is playing with them, well, that's a medium problem. And they probably need to come and get some help from you, and you can help sort that out if they can't. If they've forgotten one of their trainers for PE, well, not a major deal. There's probably something in lost property, or they can do it in their socks. We have to teach them to rate their problems, and we have to respond to their problems with the right amount of attention. So we don't want to be minimizing bullying, because for a child that is a big issue, even if we've heard it 100 times. But if their homework is a day late, making them feel they're terrible and they've failed us and failed themselves, is inflaming a situation that doesn't need to be inflamed, particularly if it's the first time. So we need to deal with catastrophizing. And then there's all or nothing thinking. Now this is really important. Many kids will go home from a good day at school where one thing has gone wrong. So perhaps they've played with their friends, they've had fun, they've learned loads and loads of new things, but the spelling test didn't go so well. Maybe they got 2 out of 10 because they didn't revise. And they come home and tell the parents it was awful, they hate school, and it's just a disaster. That's all or nothing thinking. They're thinking it's all bad because one thing was bad. Now, what we need kids to do is get perspective, to realize that, okay, one thing may have gone wrong, but next time they can revise and they can work harder and it'll be fine. Yeah. And that the rest of the day was actually really good. So they don't need to massively over dramatize this and it become all consuming. So that's important. And then there's mind reading. Now, mind reading gets many people into problems, including adults. If you're having a really bad day as a teacher and you go into the staff room and no one asks how you are, you might feel furious and uncared about and unsupported. However, it doesn't mean any of those things are actually true. People cannot read your mind. You might look a bit stressed, but they're probably feeling a bit stressed too. You have to say, do you know what, everyone, I've had a particularly bad day, really could do with some support. And we need to teach our students to do that too. Not to sit looking sulky, hoping we'll pick up that there's problems at home. Not to sit blankly looking at the wall, thinking we'll understand that they don't know how to do something. We might think they're just being lazy. We need to teach kids we cannot mind read. And our students need to know we cannot mind read, and they must clearly tell us what is wrong, and then we will be able to clearly help them. Faulty thinking is really a big block and we need to challenge it. And then, and most importantly, I think we need to talk about positive thinking. Kids often, when they're struggling with their well-being, fill their heads with what I like to call red thoughts. Red thoughts are unhelpful thoughts, like I can't cope, it always goes wrong, it's too hard, it's not worth trying, it will be a disaster, I'm not good enough, all that kind of stuff. Now, unhelpful thoughts leads to feelings of not being in control and feeling despondent. And that leads to behavior that looks like not trying, being bored, and just not doing the best. Red thoughts are really quite dangerous, and we have to encourage kids to recognize them and stop them, to purposely tell them to shh, because they are not helping them. And instead, we need to teach them the power of helpful thinking and to let in the green thoughts, green for go. These are the thoughts we want our students to have. I can cope. I can ask for help. You see how these are all I can thoughts. I can calm myself down. I can make good decisions. I can try again. I can do this. I can do hard things. All those lovely, helpful thoughts lead to feelings of control and confidence, which leads to really positive behavior. These green thoughts are key to young people's well-being, absolutely key. Have them written up on a board in your classroom, talk about them a lot, role model them. Green thoughts, helpful thinking, getting our kids to see that they are powerful, that there is always something they can do, that problems can be solved, will make them feel so much better about themselves. There are so many things we can do to support children's well-being and help them become more robust and resilient. So many things. And I've just touched on a few here. Please give it focus. You might think being a teacher, well, it's not my job, I teach science, but you know what, you're too important. You're too important in a child's life not to be teaching them about well-being, not to be encouraging holistic wellness. We need to shine a light on emotional health and make it part of everything we teach. In fact, I believe it's the most important thing you can ever teach and bring into a child's life. So before we finish this session, I want to just do a little guided visualization with you. I want to encourage you to take a pause and a rest. You've worked really hard for the last 40 minutes, and now I want you to give yourself some peace. You can meditate in lots of different ways, through yoga, through Tai Chi, through mindfulness, but a guided meditation is a very quick way to change your state. So I invite you to close your eyes and take a few slow and deep breaths. I'm going to count down from 5 to 1, and when I get to 1, you will feel calm and deeply relaxed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now imagine a beautiful pathway leading down a sloping hill. You are barefoot and the grass beneath you feels soft and damp. And as you walk down the path, the sun is warm on your face and you feel content. You see a beautiful lake and you kneel down when you reach it and run your hands through the turquoise waters, and it is as warm as a bath. You see a little wooden boat bobbing gently at the water's edge, and you climb in and the boat feels steady and secure. Your body feels strong as you take the oars and row out onto that lake, and the water is perfectly still. You feel the boat rise slowly at the front and begin to leave the water. It tips you only slightly, and you hold the sides as you look with awe as it rises, heading towards the clouds. Soon you are in the sky, and you notice your boat has oars made of beautiful golden feathers, and you feel safe and snug and far, far away from your worries. A gentle breeze ruffles your hair. You let go of your worries, and you feel nothing but awe and wonder and deep joy as your boat gently flies you over our beautiful earth. You're far above anything that's bothering you, and it seems small. How powerful you are, and how peaceful as you row steadily through the clouds. And very slowly you direct your boat back to the lake. And with your strong arms, you row your boat back to the shore. You say thank you to that boat as you climb out of it and lay the oars gently back inside. You can come back to your boat anytime you like and take another magical journey. It's always there for you, ready to take you away from your worries. I invite you to breathe in deeply now and exhale slowly. Breathe in all the happiness and wonder from your boat ride and keep them with you as you go about your day. And when you're ready, give your body a big stretch and gently open your eyes. So there you go, a very quick little visualization can make you feel completely different. And that's a lovely thing to be able to share with your students, that literally just takes a moment, but that can make them feel absolutely amazing. So we've now come to the end, actually, of our presentation. If you have any questions for me, I will be delighted to answer them. And you are very welcome to ask some questions now in the chat box or drop me an email. My email address is there, as is my website and my podcast address. I'm the author, as I've said, of several books on wellbeing for kids, filled with fun activities to really enhance their wellbeing, including Create Your Own Kindness, Create Your Own Happy, and Create Your Own Calm. And Collins, as you know, have so much more information and so many brilliant books. And the address is here for you to get in touch with them. And they will send you certificates and recording for this session. So it's been an absolute pleasure to share this with you. I think you teachers are amazing. I know you've been through a very, very tough time. So I really suggest that you look after your well-being. Your well-being is critical. You know, you do such a good job teaching our kids, and we need you to feel good yourself in order to be able to give your best. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Becky. That was absolutely wonderful. And the comments in the chat box are just saying how it was a beautiful presentation, how everyone has learned so much. So before we get started on the questions, I think it's only right to say a massive thank you to you, Becky, for taking us through this presentation. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's picked up tips to manage my own mental well-being, as well as those of the people around me. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we will be sending everyone who attended with the recording and a copy of the webinar certificate. So if you are just patient, you should receive that in the next few days. However, if you do miss the email, you'll be able to find the recording on the webinar website. If we don't get around to answering your question, or if you'd like to see some samples of Becky's books, please do contact us at collins.international@harpercollins.co.uk. I think that's it. And now I will jump straight into the Q&A. So firstly, Becky, is your book available in electronic form?
It is, it is. All the books are available on Kindle. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. A question that we've had is how we can help students, or teaching self-care skills to students with ADHD, ADD, if you could suggest anything that could be adapted for them.
Absolutely. Well, the books I've written have all got activities in that are great fun, and they're short and they can be kept very simple. So it can include things like making lavender Play-Doh, doing a bit of yoga, things that are fun and exciting for kids with ADHD and ADD. So they don't need to be lectured at. They can actually do practical stuff that brings this well-being to life, and things like nurturing plants, for example, or growing a little garden, or maybe reading to a younger kid, are things that will enhance the self-esteem of kids with additional needs, which is really important, and give them practical things to do.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Another question that we've had actually pop up twice, which I'll just try and paraphrase for you all, is how can we enhance learners' well-being when they're facing social issues in their home? So children who live in poverty, who are tired because they have to commute a long distance, or who live with relatives while their parents work abroad.
Absolutely. So many kids live in very, very challenging circumstances, which is why it is key that we do everything we can for their emotional well-being. We can't solve their social issues, we can't, but we can teach them that they can alter their mood, that they can be robust and resilient, and that they can cope with the challenges life throws at them. So even though we can only affect a small bit of change, the change we can affect in supporting their well-being is really crucial to them dealing with the challenges they face.
And I guess on that note, someone has asked very rightly, how can we help to manage teacher well-being alongside students? I know you touched on it a little bit, but would you just like to expand on that for us?
Absolutely. I think it always has to start with yourself, and you have to make sure you're being very kind to yourself and not expecting miracles. Kids are going to be returning to school with a host of issues. They are going to be behind with the learning. You won't get the same results you get in a normal year. Take that pressure off yourself and focus, most importantly, on making your classroom a safe and happy place to be. So take that perfectionism level off yourself and make sure that you rest, that you eat well, that you take time to look after yourself and well-being. Don't work in order to achieve unattainable goals. Look after yourself first. The last thing anyone needs is you going off with stress. You know, you need to feel good. And when you feel good, you radiate that. And that's what kids pick up on.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Something else, I guess, that as teachers, they have to be particularly, or we have to be particularly aware of is what are the, I guess, early warning signs to identify poor esteem or the need for some kind of further intervention?
Yeah, well, I think this is where communication with parents is very important, because if they're telling you the child is at home being very withdrawn and extremely quiet and they're not really interested in anything, you're seeing that same response at school, you might want to take it further. On the other side of things, if you're seeing rage or particularly big sort of emotional explosions when just small things going wrong and parents are reporting the same, then it would indicate a child's bottling things up very much inside, and that's perhaps when you need to be looking to access extra help. So unusual behavior, you know, that's consistent between home and school is something to really flag up. So those contacts are very important.
Wonderful, thank you so much. I think it's really lovely that you stress the importance of this communication, not just between the student and the teacher, but between the parents as well.
Absolutely. It needs to be a partnership in looking after a child's well-being. Can't be always. Some parents perhaps, you know, aren't great parents, you know, and that's just something as a teacher you have to deal with. But most parents are absolutely in love with their children and want the very best for them. So if you can work together, you've got much more chance.
Wonderful. I'm going to summarize one question and kind of mix it in with another one. But this idea of like how to, I guess, balance the importance of teaching and making sure that students are learning what they need to, alongside equipping them with those skills for well-being. Could you just touch on that for us a little?
Yeah, I think it doesn't take much to teach wellbeing skills. Just as I showed at the end with that visualization, it literally took 2 minutes, but it can change their mood. To stop halfway through a session, have a stretch, do a little breathing exercise, could take you literally 2 minutes, but could change everything. Making one of your breaks available for kids to pop in and talk to you at school isn't a massive hardship, but could change their life if they've got a really urgent concern to tell you. So you don't have to do big dramatic things, just weave it in all the time to your personal presentation and into your classroom. It doesn't have to take away from the teaching. In fact, it will enhance it, because happier children learn better. Kids with clearer minds are more intelligent. It's been proven again and again and again. So it will only enhance their academic performance and our teaching.
That's, I think, really important. Someone in the comments has just said that they've already made huge progress in their well-being towards students and teachers, and they have noticed a difference. But
Fantastic.
I guess if I could just play devil's advocate for a second, surely some people, hopefully who aren't logged onto this webinar, but might think to themselves, well, isn't this just a sticking plaster? Will it actually make a difference? Could you give some examples, or just touch upon why it really is, other than the fact that you have so much experience in this area and you can definitely speak?
I worked for a long time as a social worker, and I worked with some children who were in very, very challenging life circumstances, and we worked extremely hard to teach them to be robust, resilient problem solvers. And many of those young people who came from really, really difficult backgrounds went on to flourish as adults, because they knew how to cope when times were hard, that they needed to be kind to themselves, not beat themselves up. And they knew that when things got tricky, they were to ask for help and to try and solve a problem rather than just sitting with it. And teaching those skills changed their lives. So you might think you're not doing a massive thing, or you might think, well, it's not going to make a massive change now, but it could be years down the line when something gets tough for them. They remember you said, don't sit with the problem, you can solve it. Identify the helpers, all the little things you taught them come back. And I think they'll remember those lessons far more than they might remember the capital city of somewhere, because this is about life. And if you teach them that being around positive, happy people makes them positive and happy, and that determines their peer groups, well, we know how powerful, peer groups are on life opportunities and chances. So don't underestimate your power. Every child I've worked with has named their teacher amongst their top role models and the most influential people in their life. And they always mention their teacher as one of their helpers. You're really important, far more than you know.
That's such a lovely thought to have as we move on with the rest of our days. I guess something that someone has asked, which links in really nicely to that, is the effectiveness of these techniques for adult learners. And I don't want to answer for you, but I think they're hugely effective. I mean, even for me, sitting here listening to this webinar, I felt that there's been so much that I can go on and take into my own day and into my own life. I think we've got time for maybe a few more questions. There's one that asks about if someone isn't really able to understand the importance of self-care despite the consistent and constant reinforcement of it, how would you try and bring that child around to practicing self-care within their own lives?
Well, there's one activity I like to do with kids I work with is a little hand massage. And it's just a very simple thing, a little bit of moisturizer, and they massage their hands before we start the session. And it's just a little bit of self-love, and it feels good. So whilst a child might not understand how it works and might not really be taking that on board, you keep weaving it in and they'll realize they feel better. And eventually those neural pathways will strengthen, and it will become integral to them that when I look after myself, I feel better. Yeah. So just keep doing it and trust in the science. And the science tells us that what we focus on expands. It does. If we focus on the fact we've had a bad day and we tell our partner and we go on and on about it, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. If we focus on a good news story that we heard, we feel good. And that's how we teach kids. We do it again and again and again until we strengthen those neural pathways and it becomes a habit, and they make that correlation between feeling good and looking after themselves.
Wonderful. And I'll just ask, I guess, my own question, but we've got a few minutes left, and I just want to give you the floor again, Becky, to talk about if there's one thing that you would love people who've attended this webinar, who listen to the recording, to take away from this session. Now is the time.
Okay. Oh, I think it would be, referring back actually to one of the earlier questions, it has to start with you. We know teachers have been through a really hard time teaching online and in the classroom, juggling their own concerns, juggling everything, and being exposed to so much. You have had a hard time. It's going to get harder because you're going to have these kids coming back into schools with all these issues. Look after yourself first. Treat yourself beautifully and be your own best friend, and it will shine out of you and your kids will absorb that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. There's been a few comments and queries about being able to refer to this for future reference or to share with your colleagues. I think it's really important. If you would like to share this, we will be uploading the recording in the next, hopefully, couple of hours, and it'll be on our website. We're also, Becky has very kindly shared with us some samples from her books. So if you'd like to view those, please do drop us an email at collins.international@harpercollins.co.uk. And for other activities, for grounding and self-care tips and all the things discussed in the presentation, please do get in touch with us and we'll do our best to share those. But that's it from me today. Thank you so much for joining us again, and thank you so much to Becky for taking us through such a wonderful presentation. Have a lovely day, everyone, and take care.